In this video, I'm about to talk about whether Errol Spence Jr. should retire or not. So, Errol Spence Jr. took a one-sided beating in a generational fight against Terrence Crawford. It was so bad that someone in the comments left a great comment in this community saying that Crawford beat the Hall of Fame out of Errol Spence. And I think that that is true. I think also what we have to look at is at times the way Spence was reacting to punches in this fight didn't look good. And what I mean by that is we had seen him in the Ugas fight take a shot, go to chin check avenue, and react odd. But in this fight, it was the clean concussive blows repeatedly, where at a certain point, it looked as though Spence was just fighting off of toughness and he was no longer implementing a game plan. And I think that that was based on the damage he had taken. You compile that with a car crash, a car accident that occurred, and you look at the fact that a lot of Spence's style is based on physicality, durability. He has a good jab, but he's a big physical guy who imposes his will. If damage starts to erode the fabric of who Spence is, he is not the same fighter. Now we got to learn more about his mentality. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I do think he should do the rematch because he worked his whole life to get these big fights. There's no point not to do it other than potentially risking more damage, but he really should do it if he's capable. But if he doesn't pursue this Crawford fight, what more is there for him to do in the sport of boxing? I guess it's hard for a fighter to leave the sport on this because it's kind of like leaving the sport the way Michael Spinks did. Michael Spinks accomplished way more than most boxers, but the lasting image is Mike Tyson knocking him out in 90 seconds and people giggling at him. Right now, the lasting memory of Errol Spence's career is what a great champion, but he's not Bud Crawford. And I think that that is the reason why it's going to be hard for Spence to retire at this very moment, because he's a proud person who I truly believe came into this fight believing he was going to beat Terrence Crawford. What we saw was Crawford was a lot more humble than Spence. And I think that part of that comes down to the divide in boxing. PBC has been focused on events, and often their model has been, let's make these larger-than-life events and then build up a fighter to be kind of like a performing artist, a musician, a traveling act, who might take on some of the traits and attributes of a rock star or a rap star or whatever. And I think Spence had kind of gotten groomed to being a main eventer in a new but old traditional model, whereas Terrence Crawford was fighting on these more boxing-centric cards, and you might hear things like, oh, he can't draw or he can't do this. The big thing was he was being groomed under the Brad Goodman, Bruce Trampler eye of what are the suitable opponents to develop him, this, that, and a third. Spence had been developed, but he had also been strategically moved to face guys that he had physical advantages over. You could kind of say the same about Crawford, but I feel like after the post-all fight, really there was no hesitation about matching Crawford in any capacity. I think it was more so Crawford was struggling to get those good fights because people were looking at it and going, man, this guy might be that. I think the Jeff Horn fight was a big fight that people overlooked in his thing because Jeff Horn's a physical guy. The issue Spence ran into in this fight, in my opinion, was Terrence Crawford was just as strong as him. And we don't want to use the word exposed, but we'll say exposed. One of the big things about Spence that I think we didn't take into account is he has to be physically stronger than his opponent, and he has to be able to push his opponent round. The fact that Crawford was able to match his strength and had a high boxing IQ, it kind of left Spence helpless. And then the fact that Spence came in, and my girlfriend brought it up, he looked high in the ring, and that was that glassy look. And there's a video circulating about a neurosurgeon talking about the effects of whatever, and who knows if that's true or not, but I do think that there's irreversible damage that's been done to Errol Spence, and he needs time to recover. Should he retire, or will he retire due to two different things? Should he? I mean, he's getting to the point where they need to take him to a place and say, hey, it's just about done. Like, it is just about done right now. We're pretty close to the end of this career. But if he wants one or two more fights, they're profitable or they're strategic fights, that's okay. But there really has to be a light at the end of the tunnel at this point. He is not going to have this 3 to 5 year career. This is very close to the end of the career, if not the end of the career, in my opinion. Now, the will he, that's where it gets interesting, because that comes down to pride. That comes down to who's around him. That comes down to all of that. I think he has very good people around him. It just comes down to what is the lasting memory that Spence wants. Because one thing I found out about Spence from this is he's someone that likes the way the public views him. He's someone that wants to be well liked. He's someone that's influenced by outside sources at times, where I found that Crawford was kind of like the big he's not as impacted by the world at large. He's going to do his thing, and he's kind of like a Kobe Bryant figure where he's consumed with greatness. You saw Spence's shirts. They resonated with people because he used modern rap slang, and they were humorous shirts, and you saw a lot of people wearing them. Those shirts also made a bold statement saying, I'm going to kick Crawford's butt, and now he got humiliated in the biggest fight of his life. That shirt he made now looks foolish. How does he feel after that? How does he want his legacy secured? Because I personally think unless he goes up, avenges his loss to Crawford, and wins some titles, there's no way for Spence to be a Hall of Famer now, and his legacy will be the second best of the era. And if he's not careful, if he moves up in weight, I think Tim Tszyu, like a commenter had said, is too much for him. He punches too hard, and I think it'll give him flashbacks to where he's been. And I honestly think he has to go into the Crawford fight, because say he takes a tune-up fight, I think we don't know what his mentality or the durability of him is at this point, and I think it's not outside of the realm of possibility that a punch lands and he loses a fight. I think that this fight, along with the wreck, really, really damaged Spence's career. And now it's going to be one of these what-if type of stories. It's the trajectory his career is going on. Boxing is not fair. Should he retire? Probably not, because he still has some opportunities, and boxing is an opportunity-based business. But within the next year and a half, he probably should not be a prize fighter, if you want my honest opinion. So, let me know in the comments, what do you think about this?